Hi Jack, it's Billy here. I've tried to record a couple of videos back to you, and I'm struggling a little bit because I'm trying to do it in a very short space of time and people keep phoning me, so forgive me. To try and cut to the nub of the questions that you've raised, do Jewish people exert more influence than they should do? Are Jewish people in some way detrimental to the countries in which they live? And those seem to be your two key themes. Quite apart from your telling me that I'm second string when it comes to talking to white nationalists, okay, I consider myself first string. You can think what you like. Frankly, I don't think I want to waste any more time talking to these cunts, because the more that somebody like TJ or Fake Sagan or anybody else who's got a high profile on YouTube spends talking to these nut jobs, the more airtime they get, the more people hear what they've got to say, and frankly, what the fuck's the point? They don't make any cunting sense. They're just a bunch of freaks. The Jewish Internet Defense Force, as an example of Jews exerting influence on the web, okay, I mean, they're a bit kooky. They've managed to get a total of 5 people banned so far, according to their own website, and one of those they've managed to get banned repeatedly, clearly, but they have a list of several hundred, and most of these guys aren't breaking YouTube's terms of service. So you can flag until you go blue in the face, but unless you breach those terms of service, your video is not going to get removed. That's just how it works. I can, and I will show you now, Muhammad's was a goat fucker. It's not hatred, and I'm not stirring up violence. You can't ban me for saying Muhammad was a goat fucker. And he was a goat fucker. It's just the way that it works. Now, I wound up a few years ago, along with a bunch of other YouTube atheists, on a Turkish newspaper, with our internet accounts published as examples of atheists who were problems on YouTube talking shit, as part of the blasphemy challenge stuff and the sort of response to it in the Islamic world. But it was a Turkish newspaper, and I think this is fundamentally the issue. The Jews appear to be far more organised, and I hate even using that term, the Jews, because I think it denotes all kinds of stuff which just isn't there. But Jewish people tend to be more organised because they have, all of them, a connection to Israel. People that consider themselves to be Muslims could argue that they have a connection to Mecca, but that's about the only thing that they all agree on. They all agree that there is a Quran, that Muhammad was the prophet of God, and that Mecca is his holy city. Other than that, not a great deal. They all come from different nation states, they all come from different parts of the world, they come from different cultures, they come from different views. Likewise, Catholics all have a connection to the Pope, but no one takes the Vatican too seriously anymore, not least because no one is trying to destroy the Vatican. Israel, by contrast, is under attack pretty constantly, inside and out, by all of the nation states, and has developed a siege mentality. And if you want to see what happens to a country when it goes completely mental and starts to defend itself at the expense of everything that is good about itself in the first place, you need to look no further than Israel. You used to look at the USSR as an example of a nation-state that had spent so much money on defence that it had forgotten what the fuck it was defending. And the states under Bush came quite close. They've abandoned their core principles, and they have just gone straight for overwhelming military force. Now, you can argue about whether or not they have an undue level of influence in Washington and are getting more help than any other country. Fair enough, you're allowed to ask that question. I have no real comment to make except that Muslims don't exert the same level of control in Congress because there are far fewer Muslims in the States, and they've been there for a far shorter period of time. Israelis are a new invention. Jews, however, have been in the States since the Founding Fathers. Since before that, since the Mayflower sailing, there have been Jews in the States. And this is why I'm surprised to hear you use the term host nation, because Jews generally had a hand in the creation of the States. So I'm confused as to how you can call the US a host country. And there are thousands and thousands of different ethnic groups in the States. That's kind of what the point of the US is. And you're a black guy, you clearly have got connections to the States in one way, shape, form or another. And they were probably, if I can make an assumption about your background, they were probably at some point ancestors of yours who were slaves in the States, or if not in the States, then elsewhere. It's of course, it's completely conceivable that you came from East Africa and moved across at some point to the United States more recently than the end of slavery, within which case your ancestors were also probably involved in slavery because they were the guys selling the white guys the slaves in the first place. Which brings me neatly to my next point, which is this kind of thinking is fundamentally lazy. To look at, for example, slavery and say all white people, as a result of slavery, have a collective guilt is something that you could legitimately say. But to say that vis-a-vis all white people, therefore all white people are assholes does not work. Or that all white people are guilty of the same level of atrocity is also not fair. To say that no black people had a hand in slavery is also not fair. My point here is there are a whole bunch of shades of grey that exist in any stereotype that you want to throw up. In any stereotype you want to throw up. So to talk about the Jews is fucking silly. But by all means talk about bankers, because bankers is a much more accurate and descriptive term. People that are involved in the world of finance. There are a number of Jews in there. That does not mean that they are all Jews. That does not mean to say that all Jews are bankers or that all bankers are Jews. These things just don't flow, and it's not as broad a brush as that. You have to be much, much, much more careful with your generalizations than to say an entire religious group is or is not exerting a particular level of influence. I think there are some examples that you can take of this, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because, frankly, I really don't have the time to fart about with this today. But I'm going to stick a link in the side which is related to a poster for a white nationalist party. These are guys that you expressed some potential admiration for. What was that about? At the beginning of your video. A white nationalist party in the UK is called the British National Party. Formerly the British Nazi Party. Formerly the British Fascist Party run by Oswald Mosley. The BNP is running for European Parliament. They want MEPs, members of European Parliament, at the May elections. I think it's May. They've got a poster which is a picture of a Spitfire. They've put on the top of it Battle for Britain. Their point being that they believe that there are too many immigrants in the country, that they should be thrown out. The irony of this is that the picture they have chosen is from a particular squadron called 303, which you can pick up on because of the RF on the side of the Spitfire is 303's particular. Every squadron had a two-letter number, and that was theirs. And that was a Polish section. They were Poles. That picture is of a Polish pilot flying a British-provided Spitfire. They accounted for something like 12% of all Luftwaffe losses during the Battle of Britain. They were without doubt one of the reasons that we won the Battle of Britain. And it's absolutely ironic that the BNP should use a picture of Poles to try and kick Poles out of the country. And it shows this kind of fucking stupid thinking. You have to sit down there and be much more nuanced than to say an entire group of people, based on where they come from or their religion, are useless. It cannot flow like that. You can disagree with people's perspectives that they may hold around some of these areas, but their influence, their level of organisation, it's entirely down to those individuals, not their ethnicity. And white nationalists, and I think the whole idea of a white nationalist is an oxymoron. White nationalists don't get this because it's so much easier to point at him. He's got black skin. He must be a dickhead. He looks a bit Jewish. I bet he fucks children. It's fucking lazy. Grow up. But Jack, you seem like a reasonable guy. I'm sure you can work this out for yourself. And I'm sure you can find a way of expressing your discontent with the position that people find themselves in the States. I'm sure you can find a way of articulating that other than it's because of the Jews. You must be able to find a way, because it'd be a pretty sad day if you really genuinely couldn't.